Hi there. Welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. I'm your host, Misha McKittrick. This is a podcast where we believe that as you take time for a mindset check, you have more power than you think you do. And where we also believe that as you reminisce and as you really pay attention to what you're reminiscing, you can find how much power it can bring you in your everyday, your very day that you're living today. So how are you? I wanted to just say thank you to everybody who is reaching out and joining the Mindset Check group on Facebook. I just wanted to say thank you for those of you who are asking to join that. And it's really cool because we're trying to create a safe space. So we do ask you a couple of questions before you join. And that is just really, are you really dedicated to being a kind person to the people in the group and holding a safe space there? Because that's really what I'm hoping to create there. And it's really cool because I get to share with you some things visually that I can't share with you here. I also get to share with you audio things. You'll get a playlist this week of really powerful songs, songs that kind of pump me up and fill me with power and abundance, and songs that you submit there as well. That will be a cool interaction and exchange there. And then we also have different things happening where I have guests that come into the group and we do lives and we talk about mindset and different perspectives and different ways of looking at life. And we have these incredible conversations that you can jump into and listen that are on that page in Facebook. So if you haven't joined, check that out. We'd love to have you there. Just a little reminder or a plug for those of you that are new with us. In this podcast, in the first season, we are really reading through my journal from when I was 15 and pregnant, something that I felt inspired to share with you publicly. And in that, we are diving through and really going through day to day some of the tough years that I tackled when I was pregnant and then losing my little girl. And so we're diving into mindset and the way that it looks and shows up in the life of this young girl. And by doing that, we get to see our own mindset in our days applying, even though it's a different story, even though you're living a different story than I lived when I was 15, right? Somehow it all still applies, because the truth is that struggle in life, it applies to all of us. We're not free of it. And so being able to take that apart together will help us to find and gain power, and to be able to look at the way that other people find and gain power in life gives us power in life. So amazing. In this episode, we have, of course, Jesse, who I'm married to at the time. And then we have Tanya and Derek, who Tanya is Jesse's sister, and we're living with Tanya and Derek at the time. And then I have a friend named Millie in the episode, and she's just briefly mentioned. She's just a friend of mine. And then we get to talk about one of my favorite mentors from my life, and her name is Jane. So let's dive in. October 2nd, 1994. About a week ago, Jesse and I decided to separate. Friday was our anniversary, September 30th. He took me out for dinner, and then we went for a walk out at Willard Bay, in the mud and in our dress clothes. But it was pretty, and I loved it, except for the bug bites I got that are driving me crazy. Anyway, we're still at Tanya and Derek's, and I'm looking for a car, a job, and a place for me and Taylor to live. Millie and I are thinking about moving in together because I think it's too scary to live by myself. Jesse thinks I can find a place by myself with no car in one day. Bleep. He makes me so bleeping mad. Plus, I haven't seen him for the last 24 hours. Last night for about an hour, and before that, he was at work. I see him when he takes me to school in the morning, and he comes home around 1 to 5 in the morning and sleeps with me. Also, I can't handle this. I'm going to bleep pull my hair out. I feel like just holding Taylor and crying. Why can't I be strong? Why can't I do it? I don't want to go back to Cedar. I don't want to live with my family. I have my own now, even though it's falling apart. I want to make it on my own. Now what? I'll be on welfare, food stamps, WIC, get child support, and go to school, go to work, pay the bills, take care of Taylor. How long will that last? All I care about is Taylor. I love her so much. I would do anything for her. I would give my life for her. Taylor, I love you more than anything or anyone. I love you. Oh, there is so much in this little post. When I think to how many emotions I felt in this time. How angry I felt, how confused I felt, how much it incited like more love, how I'm pouring my heart over just trying to just take care of Taylor and how much I love her. There's a lot. And I am so excited today to look back on a really important figure during this time in my life and to tell you about her. So first, let's just break down what happened in this post, because I wrote things and I was really scattered. And looking back, I can give you a little bit more details. So it was a really strange thing. He did bring me a dozen roses. He picked me up. We had it all planned to go out for this really nice dinner, like one of the nicest dinners that I had been to at that point in my life. And we had this amazing celebration. And then at the end of that date is when he told me, I said in my post that we decided to separate, which I think is really interesting because I don't remember it going down that way. I remember him taking me out to this dinner and then saying, I'm leaving. I'm leaving. And I can remember feeling really confused. I can remember the contrast between, just hours before. And it's not like I felt like I was secure or safe by any means, but just that we were in this like limbo time. But I know for sure that like he called the shots, that he decided I'm gonna go live at my dad's house. Remember, his friends moved to Ogden just after he convinced me to move, saying that he would leave his friends. And his friends moved to Ogden the day after we did. And then he, a month later, maybe about 2 months or just under, and then he decides to go live with his friends at his dad's house. So he's leaving us and separating and had just talked us into moving our whole life to Ogden. And now he's leaving. Oh, looking back though, I needed the experience. I needed the experience to be able to see the things I would see so that I could make the decisions I needed to make in the future. So sometimes when you're in the middle of things, remember that. Remember that you're experiencing things so that you have a more formidable base to be able to make decisions for your future. I think that's a really important thing to remember, because we're in the middle and when you're in the fog and in the mud, it just feels sticky and yucky and you don't want to be there. But it's important to remember that the fog and the middle and the mud and the messy, it always has a purpose. It always has a purpose. I really expressed in this entry how, like a breaking point, like why can't I do it? Why can't I just be strong and why can't I do this, And the chips had not settled, that's for sure, I was riding kind of in the middle of those things happening. And of course I was enrolled in school. And I liked that. I say that I didn't want to go back to Cedar to live with my family. It's not because I didn't love my family and didn't feel comfortable there. I felt more than comfortable there. It's just because in my mind I felt like, I was now doing this on my own, and you just want to. You want to support for your own. And also just feeling the worry for the future, like what will life look like? And the stress and the overwhelm, and kind of thinking of things as a whole in a moment when I was probably just supposed to be taking a small bite, right? Like there's a huge cake, and I was just supposed to be taking a small bite of it and just allowing that to digest so that I could move on. And I think for me in my life, I tend to see the whole cake and get frustrated that I can't eat the whole cake at once, right? Maybe it's a poor example, but it's just kind of what happens to us when we're faced with a breaking point or a lot of overwhelm at once, But looking back on this time, and I've alluded a little bit to a person who was in my life, and I've told you about this school that I was going to that was an alternative high school, right? I say that I was metaphorically going to the school of hard knocks, but really I was attending an alternative high school. And I've told you about the parenting wing in this school, how us teen moms were able to take our babies to school with us, and then we each took a turn in the nursery throughout the day so that the rest of the day we were able to go to our classes. And this was really an amazing setup. And the situation at the adult high school it really did feel a little bit scary going into our school. The parking lot just felt rough, passing by serious gang members and wondering, like, do they have guns in their pockets, or like what is going on? Like, it felt scary to me. But inside of that school, inside the parenting wing, which was an area of the school that was dedicated just for teen moms, and inside of there, we had similarities with the women that were going to school there. And we had mentors and teachers, people who were helping us through life, who cared about us and our babies. Oh my gosh. I'm trying to remember right now the woman's name who was over the nursery, and she oversaw all of the changing revolving doors of all the mothers that would come in throughout the day. And she was just there the whole day with babies, and just this beautiful, Judy. Gosh, her name was Judy. This beautiful, huge smile right across her face. And just, she was always there rocking a bunch of babies on her lap in a rocking chair and just loving us and so happy. And I've talked about how we had an art class and how much therapy that brought to us. And Moselle in her history class, how these teachers really loved us. They cared about us and they nurtured us in the situation that we were in. And there was one in particular that burrowed her way into my heart forever and ever, and it is an absolute privilege to speak of her. Her name was Jane. Jane was more than just a person who showed up as a teacher for me at this school. Jane was and became an incredible friend to me. Jane spoke hope to my heart, and she consistently referenced my future as though she could see my path unfolding before me. She would always tell me, Mish, in a few years, I see you vacationing on a beach in Acapulco. And I didn't even know where that was. She told me. She described it to me. And you know what I saw? I just saw a different future because she could see that for me. She also spoke to me about the possibility of going to college and how that would bless my life. And she helped me see that it was possible for me to do that, to pull off education. And remember in the last episode, we talked about how taking the city bus, and how as the weather grew increasingly worse, I walked to the bus in the snow carrying my baby, my diaper bag, and my books. And Jane was there as this constant voice telling me that life was going to be different. She could see it for me. She spoke hope. She believed in me, and it was so much a part of her that it felt like a constant whisper. In her presence, I knew what she thought of me. Jane was like this. She was just a magnet, and we all gravitated towards her. She would take a few of us girls to lunch and teach us how we could eat cheap at nice places. She took us to Olive Garden and taught us to order soup and salad from the menu. Soup, salad, and breadsticks. And it was awesome. We got to go out, which is something that we never really got to do for such a small amount of money. Jane lived 30 minutes up the canyon, and she lived in this spectacular home that was in the shape of a dome, and there were windows all the way around. It was just breathtaking. And she opened her home to us. She invited a few of us up for dinner, and for weeks beforehand, she spoke about it. She would tell us that we were going to be able to start the evening by going shopping. And she said that her daughter had a bunch of clothes that she didn't wear anymore. And we would just be able to go through them and see what fit us. And, she really talked about it for a few weeks to get us in this mind, in this way of just having things to look forward to in our life. And when we showed up for this evening, we were shopping through her daughter's clothes. But guess what? She also had baby clothes for us to shop for. All for free. And she told us, just pick your favorites. She had such finesse in her ways of giving. That night, we prepared cultural food, and Jane told us about all of the places that she had traveled and how a large part of raising her kids had been done while driving through Europe in a VW bus, complete with beaded seat covers. After we ate dinner, we moved into her beautiful living room, and we sat on pillows on the floor by these incredible windows. And we looked at pictures of Jane's life while we listened to her, while she told us of distant lands and of living a life in ways that we couldn't even imagine. She opened up our eyes, she opened up our mind to new possibilities. Jane also really leveled with us. She would get super real in her advice to us. I remember her telling me when I told her about these troubles with Jesse and how he moved out and we separated. She said, don't sleep with him. Do not sleep with him. Trust me that he's going to try to everything. But he's made his choice. And honestly, you would think that would come natural. That would just be a natural thing for us, girls to kind of be able to guard ourselves that way. But it wasn't. It didn't come natural. And Jane somehow knew it. And she talked to us really real. She gave us advice that, she wasn't afraid to see our lives for what they were. she wasn't going to tiptoe around anything. She gave us advice like that. There was a day that I was hiking through Zion National Park. We were hiking Angel's Landing, so if any of you are familiar with that trail, it's amazing and beautiful. And there was a part of the trail where the elevation increased and where hikers kind of had to take big steps like up. And there was a tree next to the path where the trail kind of went up in elevation. And I could tell that hikers would kind of reach out and grab on to these different branches or parts of the tree that were closest to the trail. And there were two of those, parts of the tree, branches that were right by each other. And there was one of them that was closest to the trail that got touched all of the time because people, when they were hiking, would grab onto it to help them kind of go up this sudden increase in the trail. And that branch had become very smooth and polished because so many people had touched it as they passed by it. I'm sure you've seen that before as you've been out on your own hikes and kind of just been out in nature. And I love lessons from nature. So when I was at the top of Angel's Landing and overlooking this incredible view, I was thinking about how these two branches that were right next to each other on the same trail were so different. The one that was closest to the trail was incredibly beautiful because it had been touched so many times and it had been polished by people's hands, and the oil, and just every single time they touch it, they kind of smooth the surface of this branch. And the branch that was next to it looked dry and cracked, and kind of, you could see some of the bark of the tree, and, it just didn't look as beautiful. And as I was at the top of this hike, I had paused to really let that sink in, that the branch that was closest to the path where people touch relates to our own lives. That as people pass by us in life and they really touch us, they polish our soul. And that's how I feel about Jane. Jane was an incredible influence on me when I was in that small period of time in Ogden, going through a lot of different breaking points in my life that felt to me like I could or might crumble. I love the quote by Bernice Johnson Reagan. She said, "Life's challenges are not supposed to paralyze you. They're supposed to help you discover who you are." It's just that sometimes when we're in the middle of those challenges, we don't readily see that they are helping us discover who we are. We only know how we feel in the moment. And when we have people around us who are willing to support us and love us and believe in us so much that it feels like a constant whisper, it changes our footing. It makes us more sure. I continued to visit Jane through the rest of her life. She invited me for summer visits in the places that she traveled to. She encouraged me to work for the airlines and travel the world. After a couple years passed from this point, I ended up living with her daughter in Phoenix, Arizona. And, I got my job at Delta Airlines, and I really did. I really did travel the world like Jane encouraged me to do. And when my daughter passed away, she hurt with me. And I remember her words of consolation when my dad also graduated. When it was Jane's turn to graduate, I learned that every year she made contributions to Weber State University. So that a single mother could make it through college on scholarship had so much influence on me when I learned that, because it wasn't even for, at least 10 years later that I learned that she showed up for a woman every single year and supported them financially. You know, the way that she encouraged me with her words. And when she passed away, I was privileged to attend a memorial where we dedicated a piece of Weber State University to her. And we planted her favorite daffodils there. A few years ago, I went to a movie that was called Gimme Shelter with a couple of friends. I highly recommend the watch. It was a show that was about teen moms and the people that were in place supporting them. We were all sobbing at the end of the movie. And mind you, this was just a few years ago, so I was revisiting as I was watching this movie without even knowing before I went to the movie what the movie was about. I just was invited by a friend. And here I am watching my past life kind of flash in front of my eyes. And so, as we were all sobbing, I was also sobbing almost uncontrollably. And my friend that was right by my side, she incredulously said, when she was referring to the people that had supported these girls in going through these trials, she said, are there really people like that in this world? And I was so overcome by emotion that in that moment I couldn't even answer her. I couldn't even speak. Because I had one in my life. And so I say today, yes, Holly, there are people like that. And one of them is named Jane. I hope that in sharing this story with you, that you have a little bit of time for reflection, to look back at the people in your life who have touched you, who have polished your soul, who have changed the way that you were able to move about, to believe in yourself, to see something different than what you could see in the moment that you were in, because of the way that they spoke to you. And just take a moment to appreciate them. Just take a moment and try to see yourself through their eyes today. Sometimes our view of ourselves gets cloudy, and the people around us help us see ourselves better than we can see ourselves sometimes. And so when you struggle, or when you're in the messy middle, or if you feel like you're about to break, or maybe you just need day-to-day encouragement, try to see yourself the way that anyone who has moved through your life, that has helped polish your soul, sees you. Sometimes I think if we can remember that, we can talk ourselves back into reminding ourselves that we are capable and incredible, and we can talk ourselves out of those negative spirals, because when we're in that, we really are just forgetting who we are. And remembering the words of someone in our life, if they could echo in our minds, just helps us find our footing again. So I hope for today that is a powerful takeaway for you. That you remember that you have more power than you think you do when you see yourself through the eyes of the people in your life who love you, who tend to give you the benefit of the doubt, and who see you more generously than you can sometimes see your own self. that can grant you access to power to believe in your own self and to move forward. And with that, I leave you the reminder that you really do have more power than you think you do, especially in your reminiscing. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who has written a review. It really means a lot to me. One of the reviews I love is by Run Mom 6. She says, "This is a great podcast. As a parent raising teenagers, it's a big help to hear how teenagers think and how best to respond as a parent. I love the content of reading from a journal that gives authentic content of exactly how a teenager thinks and feels at that time. I love how she laughs at her own teenage self as she reads from her 15-year-old journal. It leaves me curious, and I anxiously await for the next week's entry. Real life stories are my favorite podcast." Just wanted to say thank you so much for submitting reviews like this, because it helps people understand how they can relate to the podcast or what it can bring into their life. And it really fills me up to know that you're hearing it from that perspective. And I just want to encourage you. I know I'm sharing my story with you, and it really does encourage me when I hear the stories of people that take their dogs for a walk and, listen to the podcast, or the ways that it helps rearrange or helps them have this therapy in life. And so I just want to say thank you for sharing those stories, and I encourage you to continue to share them, because even if you want to share more details of how the podcast, like a particular episode or thought, helped you, it helps other people revisit that and to see it from a perspective that they might not have seen it the first time that it was shared. And so I just want to encourage you to share your story as well. So if you have any insights or breakthroughs or anything that helped you move through your day because of the things that we talk about on the podcast, I would love it if you share. There's a million ways you can do that. You can email me at hello@myfriendmisha.com. You can DM me on Instagram at myfriendmisha. Or of course you can jump into the Mindset Check Facebook group and you can share it there either privately or publicly. We would welcome it and love it. So just wanted to say thank you for being such a force and such an interactive community. Don't forget, this podcast can grow with your help. I would love it if you share it. And one more thing. If you want to support this podcast and moving forward, and you're on Amazon anyway, buying everything in your life, from things to welcoming in the new spring or Easter or whatever it is, right? Like toilet paper. If you could do that through my link, it doesn't cost you any more. It just gives me a kickback. It's an affiliate link. So instead of just typing in Amazon.com, it's as easy and as simple as typing in Amazon.com/shop/my friend Misha. So I would really appreciate that. And thank you again for letting me walk through a small part of your journey with you today. Remember that as you take time to take a look at the way that you're reminiscing through life, that you have more power than you think you do. Until next time, my friend.